We are the ones who don't know what we're fighting for. Give us a gun and send us all off to war. We are the ones who grow up in violent homes. We are the ones who don't know what's right or wrong. I know. We are the ones. We are the ones. We are the ones who are born into war. We are the ones. We are the ones. We are the ones who just don't give a fuck no more. No more. We are the ones who don't know why we're losing score. Give them a badge so they can send us to the morgue. We are the ones who are scared to walk out the door. We are the ones who don't know what we're dying for. I know. We are the ones. We are the ones. We are the ones who are born into war. We are the ones. We are the ones. We are the ones who just don't give a fuck now. We are the ones. We are the ones. We are the ones who are born into war. We are the ones. We are the ones. We are the ones who just don't give a fuck no more. No. Get off his fucking neck. That makes you know. He can't fucking breathe. That makes you know. We are the ones. We are the ones. We are the ones who are born into war. We are the ones. We are the ones. We are the ones who just don't give a fuck now. We are the ones. We are the ones. We are the ones who are born into war. We are the ones. We are the ones. We are the ones who just don't give a fuck no more. No.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the latest episode of I'm No Joe, your home for all things combat sports and the place where every armchair quarterback can feel like Eddie Bravo. The views and opinions presented on the I'm No Joe channel belong solely to the person expressing them, no one else. If we say it, that means we meant it. That being said, this show does contain adult themes, adult content, and general shit that you shouldn't be letting your kids intake. Be advised, viewer discretion is recommended. Proceed at your own risk. You've been warned. Gang, 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 gang. Ice cream so good. If you understood that reference, rep your set. Check in with your probation officer. I'm just kidding. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of appropriate ages, to the latest episode of the I'm No Joe podcast, the show where every quarterback gets to feel like Eddie Bravo. Today, as like most days, we are kicking it old school, and we have got plenty of shit talking and shenaniganery to talk about with you fine folks. But before we get into all that, how you doing this evening, brother?
I'm doing so goddamn tired, and unfortunately, this weekend's card is not enough to wake me up to even care.
Yeah, I agree. It's nice that we do have Punchy Kiki this weekend, but this is why we call them hangover cards. Oh, but that being said, kick things off as we like to around here. First and foremost, with a little bit of recent events, fight announcements, rumors that have been confirmed, interesting news relevant to the fight world. I feel you folks should hear about. Kicking it off, first and foremost, with a little bit of controversy tying back to last weekend. The Game Bred Bare Knuckle MMA card went down, and it was full of craziness from top to bottom. But one of the craziest things that happened, in my opinion, was watching Hector Lombard in the span of just 69 short seconds both win, then lose, then win again his fight. He dropped his opponent, just fucking rained hammers down on him. The referee jumps in as soon as Hector gets the guy to the ground and lands like 1 or 2 shots. They initially say that the fight was stopped because Hector clearly beat the shit out of the dude and it should have been stopped. Then the referee tried to say that he stopped the fight because Hector had struck the man in the back of the head, which Hector obviously disagreed with. They brought up the instant replay, and then it was back to being re-overruled again that the strikes did not hit the back of the head. They landed on the back of the ear, which is still technically legal, and it was overturned to a win again. So as if there wasn't enough controversy to begin with last weekend, they had 3 different outcomes in the same fucking match that took less than 2 minutes. It took longer to figure out how they were going to actually score and determine that fucking fight's ruling than it did for the whole fight itself to take place. It was a little fucking ridiculous. George, get your shit together, son. The other big one here, tying back, it actually came out last weekend, but right after we had done the show, so we obviously didn't get a chance to see it while we were live. The big announcement from the PFL side of things is that they have officially released Julia Budd from her contract. Turns out she never signed the bout agreement to fight Kayla Harrison because she wasn't sure if she wanted to accept that fight yet. Apparently, there were allegedly some lingering injuries that might have needed a little bit more time than the frames that they were talking about putting her into for that championship card. But Julia Budd never actually signed that fight. PFL announced that fight without having Julia Budd's signature on the contract. And then when they apparently tried to push her on it last weekend, she determined that through whatever circumstance of her own deciding, she was not going to sign that bout agreement, that date, that matchup did not work for her. And the PFL turned around and let her go for it. So as if PFL needed more fucking bad publicity coming their way. Now it turns out that they're trying to shit on a fighter who they promoted a fight that she didn't sign for. And they're trying to make it look like it's her fault. Ray Cepho, get your shit together, son. I don't know if they actually did buy out Bellator because those talks have basically gone silent. But if you did, this is not how you're going to get to keep any of those fucking fighters by playing this fucking game. Scott Coker even knew better than that bullshit. Speaking of the Scott Coker side of the house, though, big news in the Bellator side of things, as long as that's going to last. The Bellator 300 historic win against Brent Primus has officially been overturned for Usman Nurmagomedov. Not only has his win been overturned, but he has officially been suspended by the California State Athletic Commission, basically due to his own stupidity. He had a test come back with a banned substance that was received through a certified medical procedure that was not a steroid. They did not disclose what exactly the substance was. They did confirm that it was a substance that was administered through a doctor during an actual medical procedure that Usman had over the summer that was following up on whatever that procedure was. They still haven't disclosed that either. But the medication apparently was non-steroidal, but it was on the banned substance list, and he did not get a therapeutic use exemption for it, which they determined he absolutely could have, and this whole thing could have been avoided. So this is very much a different version of the Mayra Buena Silva situation all over again. The difference is it cost Usman his tournament win at Bellator 300. If Bellator gets to continue sticking around, his entire title reign is now in jeopardy. It's not clear exactly what they're going to do as an organization going forward about this. Hopefully we get little more clarity about that tomorrow night on the Bellator 301 broadcast, but we'll talk a little bit more about that later. To be fair, non-steroidal isn't as bad as it could have been, but this is another situation, like I said, just like Mayra Bueno Silva, where an athlete wouldn't have gotten any punishment or even being discussed right now had they not just done their own due diligence and filed their own fucking paperwork. So stupid shit for stupid infractions. It's a little fucking ridiculous on both parts. A little more so on Usman's, considering he's supposed to be the fucking champion over there right now. So you would expect a little better.
I said I wasn't going to talk, but this one pisses me off because if it isn't non-steroidal, it's not a performance enhancer or anything like that. Get your shit stripped. You don't deserve to be champion if you can't do the right thing and file for the fucking correct exemption that's supposed to be there in place.
Yep.
Or therapeutic exemption or whatever the fucking, you got ADD, whatever the case may be. All of those drugs are banned substances. You know it, they know it, everybody fucking knows it. Get your shit taken away. Have to work back up from the bottom. You don't deserve to be champ, as well as you don't deserve to get a title shot when that happens, Mayra Bueno Silva. Yeah. Fuck them both.
Yeah, I agree. This is kind of bullshit. This is one of, excuse me. This is one of those things that whether they do or not, I kind of hope Bellator at least sticks around to finish out the tournament they have going right now and to deal with situations like this, because this does need to be addressed. Because if Bellator disappears after tomorrow night and it just floats off into the fucking ether and these fighters go wherever they may, Usman Nurmagomedov is essentially going to have this infraction swept completely under the fucking rug and forgotten from his record, essentially, unless the organization at least stays around long enough to directly deal with things like this. He's going to get away with this. It's going to slide completely off the fucking radar in a matter of no time. And by the time he signs somewhere else and starts to build his hype back up again, this won't even be a fucking memory anymore. So we'll see. It's definitely a fucking black eye on the MMA community and Bellator at large, especially on their way potentially out the door. Not a good fucking look. Speaking of not a good look, though, 'tis the fucking season, apparently. UFC fighter Miles Johns has officially been suspended. His suspension has now officially been extended because he tested positive for the very same M3 metabolite that John Jones was suspended for. The extension of his suspension, that's a hard thing to say, is due to the levels in his tests being so low. They have to determine what the picogram is because they had to lower the threshold for actual long-term suspensions, thanks to John Jones and his bullshit. Now Miles Johns is following right down that same fucking path. I will say this. If it's just the M3 metabolite that's in his system and it's under that picogram threshold that they agreed to, he should not be suspended. At the same fucking time, there is only one way in the world to get the M3 metabolite in your body at any fucking level, and that is to consume steroids and then have them break down into the M3 metabolite in your body. So you might not be taking them now, but at some point in your life, you had to have taken those steroids in order to have the M3 metabolite in your fucking body right now. I don't care what the M3 level is. The fact that it's present at all means you took steroids. You didn't get caught, but you took fucking steroids. So I don't think John should be getting away with it. I don't think Miles Johns should get away with it, but we'll see what they're going to do now that his extension has been officially confirmed. Excuse me. And because they couldn't just stop there, they announced with the Miles Johns suspension extension that a Contender Series contestant, whose name I didn't even bother to write down, at the same round of testing was confirmed to have tested positive for cocaine during his in-fight competition and will receive a suspension, but the results of his fight don't change because he fucking lost, which is why I didn't bother to even write his fucking name down. So Contender Series, gonna Contender Series, as they say. Motherfuckers. But back into the world of relevant fighting here. We got official confirmation yesterday that taking place February 17th over in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, Tyson Fury versus Alexander Usyk is officially official now. Originally scheduled for December. Obviously, they had to push that one back after Francis Ngannou and Tyson Fury boxed. Though Tyson Fury did technically win that match, through the eyes of the vast majority of the public, Francis Ngannou scoring the only knockdown and coming out without a scratch on him was essentially the proverbial winner of that match. And that actually ties directly into the next piece of news that we've got. Now that they have officially confirmed Tyson Fury versus Alexander Usyk, the WBC came out yesterday and officially confirmed, thanks to that professional match against Tyson Fury, Francis Ngannou is now officially ranked in the WBC heavyweight boxing ranks as number 10 in the world. He is now officially ranked. He is ranked by WBC, the one that matters. So if Francis stays in the boxing world, he legitimately could be contending for heavyweight boxing belts within the next year, year and a half, realistically, depending on how this Alexander Usyk the Usyk Fury fight plays out, and then depending on what Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder do, because they're trying to put together a match between those two right now as well. Depending on how those two matches play out, Francis Ngannou is going to be a very hot commodity in the heavyweight boxing of the world very quickly, and we could see a very big shakeup coming through. Fumbled the bag, what, Dana? Sorry, I can't hear you over all those fucking counting of the monies for Francis Ngannou. Fucking dumbass. Oh, but that being said, back over to the UFC side of things. We got unofficial confirmation, because they haven't made the official announcement. They have just started to roll out the road work, as it were. To the surprise of very few, December 9th UFC Shanghai card that seemed to have essentially been pulled out of thin air just a couple of weeks ago has already fallen through. They are in the process of moving that card back to Vegas, to the Apex. They're talking about, just like they did last year for the failed South Korea card, still starting it in the middle of the fucking night, keeping it on time as if it were taking place in Shanghai. They're still going to keep the main event with Song Yadong. But we kind of said this when they announced that they were going to do a card in China like 5 weeks out from the card, with 0 fights booked for that card, that it probably wasn't going to work. And lo and behold, looks like we were fucking right.
Yeah, but we might not even get a fucking card.
At this point,
although
it's hard to say, really.
With the stable of, what they say, 600 plus fighters now, yeah, I'm sure they can throw some trash together and
right,
call
yeah,
that's card.
We should clarify that. We won't get a good card. They'll still be able to pull a card out of their ass, I'm sure, with 600 fighters on the roster. Yeah. They'll be able to put something together. I don't know that we would call it a card, but yeah, I'm sure they'll be able to pull something out of their ass last minute. But fucking UFC gonna UFC. That being said, the one UFC fight announcement we did get this week isn't even really all that exciting, but it is technically the only real UFC fight announcement we did get this week. And it's one that everyone pretty much essentially already knew was going to happen. We were just waiting for it to get a date, and now we have one. Ink is dried on the contracts. They're running it back, kind of like we all fucking thought they were going to. Magomed Ankalaev versus Johnny Walker 2 is officially confirmed. They are running it back in the Apex, January 13th, Vegas 83, first UFC card of the year to kick things off. So the UFC is quite literally starting the year off with a rematch no one asked for in the Apex. Not a great sign.
Nobody wants it, but on the other side of that, I do have to give them credit. At least they're doing the right thing by rebooking a fight that was ended in fucking an illegal blow.
Yeah, I agree. I wish that had done something like this, minus the whole stripping with fucking Piotr and Aljamain, but that's too fucking little, too fucking late for that one. So at least it looks like they might be learning from their mistakes and trying to adapt a little bit. Fingers crossed. That being said, unfortunately, once again this week, I end the news segment the way that I have ended it every single week this year, and reminding everyone that once again, we have somehow managed to live through another week of news cycle without Dana White suffering any real world consequences for openly slapping his wife multiple times down in Cabo over last New Year's. And no, Dana, despite how many times you might say it, having to live with the knowledge that it happened, it's not actual punishment enough, you stupid motherfucker. The world's going to get you one way or another. That being said, you got anything I'm going to miss over there?
No, nothing that's important. And there's only one other thing, but like I said, it's not important. Somebody retired and nobody cares.
Gotcha. Well, that being said, normally this would be the point in a podcast where it's some fucking shitty B-roll ad for some company that has nothing to do with the podcast, and none of the people on the podcast actually have anything to do with the product or role, and give you some really fucking unapologetic bullshit schlock up in your fucking face trying to sell you something you don't fucking need. We don't play like that around here. I'm No Joe podcast is sponsored by viewers like you. Patreon.com/I'm No Joe. For as little as $1 a month, you can help us do what we do around here, and it gives you in return, first and foremost, your name on the end of every broadcast that comes on this channel. But more importantly, you get unrestricted and unfettered access to behind the scenes, unaired, and literally unairable content from us here on the I'm No Joe channel. Things we have to legally put behind a paywall to show you, you get sole access to, just because we appreciate you helping us do what we do around here. That being said, normally in the podcast, this is the point where we bring on our bona fide young fella to finger the pulse for us and tell us all about the names that are going to be names before the names. But unfortunately, this week, life happens. So we're going to take a look at the card real quick in honor of Slow's Cans and Contenders. See if we can't pick out ourselves a couple of cans and contenders in this most hangover of hangovery cards we have in this Vegas fight night coming up. Let me see here. Here we go. Get this card pulled up.
Let me run with this. 99% of these fucking card is all cans.
Yeah.
Hey, you look at everything on the prelims, there's nothing that stands out to me that says it is a must watch or somebody who I think is going to be somebody. Most of them are all guys who are mediocre at best, barely getting them shit together. I guess if I'm going to pick a contender, it's going to be a weird one. So I'm going to say as a whole, just because I like the weirdness of these two motherfuckers together, Chase Hooper and Jordan Levitt.
Yeah.
That's got to be the one contender fight on the entire fucking card for me. Because God knows nobody cares about Michael Morales and Jake Matthews coming in as the co-main event. I think they'd have been better off with fucking Mini Askren and fucking Jordan Levitt going at it.
But a lot of the reason that fight unto itself is getting as much hype as it is because Michael Morales is one of the two fighters in the UFC from Ecuador besides Cheeto. So
yeah.
Hopefully he does good and helps carry that flag, but at the same time, he hasn't done shit at this point to get anybody really excited about him yet either. So,
and then you got a hot and cold Jake Matthews, and he was hot on his last shot out. So chances are that dude from Ecuador is going to get a pad his fucking resume a bit.
Yeah, he's probably going to get leveled this round for sure. Let's see. I will say there is one fight on the prelims that I am actually genuinely curious about. And that's the fucking Trey Ogden versus Nicholas Mota fight. Nicholas Mota, I almost feel bad for in the way that they brought him into the UFC. He's a fucking young kid. He's got a lot of fucking potential. He had a lot of hype coming in, but man, talk about running you into a fucking brick wall to introduce you to the fucking fan base. They didn't do that guy any fucking favors. Trey Ogden is just one of those fucking puzzle pieces that I don't understand. I'm not sure if he's one of those Damon Jackson just looks like the roofer that disappears after lunch on Friday kind of dudes, or if he really is like secretly a badass that just rocks the average dad bod, doesn't want to be, you know, the stereotypical visual athlete and come out there and just quietly creep through and kick ass and take names. it's an interesting matchup, man. It's an interesting matchup. It's one of the few on the prelims I'm actually looking forward to. But yeah, no, this card, man, top to bottom, this is why we call these before and after pay-per-view cards hangovers, because this is a whole lot of contractually obligated fights that just have to be put on a card somewhere as we close out towards the end of the year. And we talked about it a little bit earlier. We are off for 2 weeks after this card, after tonight's show for the Thanksgiving break. All the major combat sports are pretty much taking a break during that same time period. And then we have 3 UFC cards to round the year out. The December 2nd card from Austin, the December 9th card that's now going to be back in Vegas instead of Shanghai, and then December 16th for that UFC 296 card. That's it. That's all we've got for the rest of the year. So they've got to put as many of these contractually obligated fights they have left somewhere. We're getting a lot of them this weekend, it looks like. Yeah, there's honestly not a whole lot to be excited about on this card for damn sure.
You know, now that I think about it, there is one where I see poor guys getting thrown to the fucking wolves. That's the Euros Medici fight, and fucking that new dude from Kyrgyzstan. I can't even say his fucking name. This is his first fight in the UFC, and they're gonna put him against Euros. That's a rough fucking draw. Euros isn't a world breaker, but we've seen him take out some pretty decent names.
Yeah, he's no walk in the park for sure. He might not be a world breaker, but he's far from a fucking can. Yeah, that's going to be a very interesting matchup as well. No, I think that's about what we've got for cans and contenders in this week's card. That being said, that'll bring us to the only segment on the show that actually requires its own disclaimer. me. Tapology.com does not in any way, shape, or form support, sponsor, or endorse the I'm No Joe podcast. Yet. That being said, Tapology.com does offer the ability to go onto their website, create yourself a free account, and even make a group for people like ourselves to make fantasy-style MMA picks. We made a group. It's called I'm No Bookie, all one word, or Group 965, however you need to search it. It is open to the public. You are more than welcome and encouraged to make yourself an account, join the group, tell us who the fuck you are, and then make some fantasy MMA picks and put them head-to-head against ours in a little segment that we call Tapology with TJ.
Sir, all right. So we're going to start with this last week, and I apologize for the lack of enthusiasm, but I'm fucking tired again. So let's go back to last weekend. UFC 295, Prochazka Pereira. Overall, the group did fantastic. Again, we only had one person who fell below the 500 mark, but with the way some of those fights played out last weekend, they could have went in either way for a bunch of people. To be honest, some of those fights did not go the way I thought they were going to go. But bringing in the top spot, I think they're passing the buck in the household. Donna gets it done this week. So Don got it last week. Donna's got it this week. Don wasn't too far behind her, only a couple of picks. Granted, she is the only one who got 9 or more correct in our group. Everybody else was sitting at the 6-7 mark. And then, unfortunately, coming down at the bottom of the pack there, Vin Dog, the booty hog. Pulled out the dick, stomped on it, and said, I've had enough this week. We'll try again next week. So that's where that was at. Like I said, overall, though, the group did fantastic. Like I said, there were some really odd fucking fights as far as outcomes were concerned. Not that the fights themselves were overly odd. There's some questionable box work by those that were commentating, but other than that, solid card. A lot of knockouts. Definitely a lot of fucking knockouts. And very quickly, a lot of them. So if you did miss that card, go back and watch it. It's completely worth it. And if you haven't joined us over on Tapology, please do so. Group 965, I'm No Bookie. Either way, you can find us. Add yourself in there. Let us know who you are. We'll talk shit about you or praise you when you do well. That's all we got for last week's. Moving on to this week with some odds. There are some surprisingly wide odds this week. For the most part, as has been the case lately, a lot of coin flips on the card. So I'm only going to cover some of the bigger fucking wider odds there. We're going to start down towards the bottom of the card. Well, how actually it's not even going to be in any particular order. Who the fuck am I kidding? I'm gonna martyr this guy's name, and that's okay. Jekka Charlotte. I'm probably fucking Sergey. And Lucas Alexander. Got Lucas coming in as a minus 550 favorite. Jekka as a plus 400 underdog. The relative unknowns, those are pretty wide fucking odds. I'll take it as it is there. Go ahead and bet crazy if you want to. Then next one I'm going to cover here is going to be Christian Leroy Duncan and Dennis Tululian. They've got Dennis coming in as a plus 375 underdog to Christian Leroy Duncan as a minus 500 favorite. Big wide odds on this card. Like I said, they've got some wide ones and a whole bunch of coin flips as per usual, but a good bunch of wide ones. Now I'm gonna skip up. I'm gonna skip one in here because I want to cover the widest one last. So we're gonna jump up to the co-main and the main. So the co-main being Jake Matthews and Michael Morales, which we were just talking about briefly a minute ago. You got Jake Matthews coming in as a plus 240 underdog. Michael Morales, a minus 300 favorite, which in my eyes makes sense since we know Jake Matthews is a hot and cold fighter, and he was fucking hot to trot his last time out. So that makes sense. I'm not saying the odds should be that wide because Jake Matthews is still no walk in the park, even when he is hot and cold. Dude can take a punch. Then brings us into the main event, which also has some wider odds here. And it might surprise some people based on rankings and what people think of these fighters. But they have Brendan Allen coming in as a minus 450 favorite over a plus 333 Paul Craig, the Bear Jew, coming in as an underdog pretty steeply. Apparently, they think Brendan Allen's going to be able to keep it on the feet there and not get subbed out. We'll see. Although, strange shit happens there. So, going in that co-main and main, you want to make some crazy parlays? That might be the place to fucking do it with those two sets of fights because the strange shit could happen there. Now, for the widest odds on the card here, you've got Peyton Talbot and Nick Aguirre. Aguirre, I'm probably martyring that fucking name, but either way, it doesn't matter. They've got Peyton Talbot currently through BetMGM coming in as a minus 750 favorite and Nick as a plus 500 underdog. Again, two random guys you pulled out of a fucking barrel, throw them together. How the fuck they came up with these odds, I do not know. They're probably looking at world rankings and things like that, which I am not going to go out of my way to do. But for guys who are, what's the nicest way to put this? Very, very fresh into their UFC careers. And by that, I mean, Peyton Talbot has not fought yet. Nick has fought one time and got beat via decision. I'm just saying, at this point, you're basically two new guys. I don't know how you're going to fucking call that. The bright lights affect everybody so different. Not to mention, if you're going to get Peyton, who's coming in on his inaugural fight, a minus 750 favorite over a guy who's already had a fight and lost in the UFC, but he's already been under the bright lights, so he can make the adjustments now. I just think the odds are a little fuckered on that one. Not saying they're wrong because I don't fucking know either enough about either one of them to give a damn to look into it, but that one I feel like you could make a stupid bet and win some money. Not saying it's going to happen, but those are that's the widest odds on the entire card. It's the widest ones we've had in a while, so take that as it is and feel free to make some bets this weekend. Like I said, those were all odds were all via BetMGM. So where you make your bets, the odds may vary. So just pay attention to where you're at there. Remember, the minus portion is the favorite, not the plus portion. That makes a big difference on payouts. Just saying, if you're going to bet underdogs, you want big underdogs. You know, not telling you to do that because, well, that shit doesn't always play out that way. In fact, it rarely does. Usually, the odds makers are usually pretty close to spot on. Usually, not always. I mean, this week I feel like there's some fucking outliers here. So I'll take it with a grain of salt, and we'll give you guys some more updates next week when we come back next week. Oh, not next week. Shit, 3 weeks out.
3 weeks from now, yeah.
Yeah,
After the
fuck, we're
Thanksgiving
3
break.
weeks out. So you don't have to deal with our ugly faces for 3 weeks. In the meantime, that tells me you have 3 weeks to go over to tapology.com and join the group. 965, I'm no bookie. Create yourself an account if you haven't done so already. If you already have done so and you're not in the group yet, what the fuck are you doing with your life? If you haven't created an account, what the fuck are you doing with your life? Go create an account, get in the group, let us know who you are. Have some fun with us. None of this is serious. It's all bragging rights and talking bullshit and just for fun in general. But again, group 965, I'm no bookie. Do your job. Join the group.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, sir. Much appreciated. So before we get into a little bit more about that UFC card, because there's not really a whole lot left on the bones to pick through that fucking thing, I do want to take a moment here to give everybody the full fight menu breakdown for this weekend, because there is a lot going on this weekend. Going on actually in about 10 minutes right now, Shakur Stevenson is actually getting ready to walk out and box one of the last big boxing cards of 2023. Kicking off tomorrow evening at 5 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Central Standard Time. Ostensibly, the final Bellator card as of right now, Bellator 301, and they are not missing the opportunity to go out with a bang. I'm telling you right now, some of the best fights that are going to take place this weekend are going to happen on this Bellator 301 card. Granted, they've got, I believe, 17 fights on this card, so they are as well getting as many of their final fights in as they can. But Pitbull versus Shabib is fucking great. Patchy Mix versus Sergio Pettis might be the best fight of the weekend, period. That's got all kinds of fucking excitement all over it. And then Yaroslav Amosov versus Jason Jackson for the fucking strap. Amosov back from war, back to kicking ass in the cage again. Jason Jackson is a bad motherfucker from down there in Killcliff, too. That's going to be a great fucking matchup. That Bellator card is going to be bloated as fuck, but there's some great fucking fights going down tomorrow.
And there is also one fight on there where we can all wish for the double knockout.
Rafael Stotts, Danny Sabatello, too?
Nailed it. Come on, we want double knockout. Come on. Fucking bing, bing. Both of them hitting the mat and staying the fuck down, getting carted out on stretchers. Everybody wins.
Yeah, Rafael Stotts, man, for all the hype that dude had, Patchy Mix fucking stole every bit of it. Stole every fucking bit of that flying knee.
Yeah, and they're gonna let Danny Sabatello try to beat him. And if he does, you're never gonna hear the end of it.
Yeah. Yeah, Danny's never gonna fucking shut up if he manages to get over on Rafael ever.
That's why I'm just waiting for a double knockout. Double knockout. Come on, double knockout.
Yeah, for damn sure. No, there is some interesting fights on that card for sure. I will say, look, no shade intended, but irony is irony no matter where the fuck it happens. And I do have to say there is a bit of irony in the only one out of those 17 fucking fights on this Bellator card, the only person to have missed weight is Gilbert Melendez's wife, who hasn't fought in like 3.5 fucking years and is trying to come back for this final Bellator card and then missed fucking weight by, I believe, 3 pounds. Little fucking ironic, okay? But there's a lot of good fights on this fucking card. That being said, tomorrow evening, starting late, 9 p.m. Central Standard, LFA 172, there are, again, a couple of good names on this card that the casual fan will even recognize. The hardcores are going to recognize probably 2/3 of this card. This is another one of those where there's a good percentage of this roster that's probably going to end up in the UFC at some point. So definitely worth it if you need some punchy kicky tomorrow evening, and assuming that Bellator card is done by then, who knows? LFA kicks off tomorrow evening. Kicking off Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Central, with good reason. It is the biggest MMA event ever in German history. Octagon 49 taking place, another of the European UFC-feeder organizations, going to Cologne, Germany to put on a gigantic card. This is another one of those where casuals probably aren't going to recognize many. Hardcores are going to recognize a couple, but this is another feeder organization, so you're watching for the who's going to be, not the who is on these cards. And then that will bring us to the UFC's Saturday night Saturday night's Apex card. Paul Craig versus Brandon Allen. We've already talked about a bunch of the ridiculousness on this card. So I want to pick at this main event here for just a little bit here. Brandon Allen is trying to just make a run, and he's not doing a bad job. Let me pull up his record here real quick. Bruno Silva, Andre Muniz, Christoph Jotko, Jacob Malkoon, Smilin' Sam, all the way back until Chris Curtis in December of 2021 before Brandon Allen got a loss. He's been on a fucking run. He's been tearing his way through. My only concern is that the guys he's been tearing through haven't necessarily all been top caliber. Smiling Sam Alvey is a fucking gimme. I like Jacob Malkoon, but he's a fucking can. He's there because he's Rob's training partner, and it's shown almost every time he's gotten in the cage. Christoph Jotko, fun dude, interesting fighter, not a world breaker. Andre Muniz, great arm bars, not a lot else to brag about. Bruno Silva, what? Like, he does not have the greatest record, but what he's been doing against those guys has looked fairly decent. The issue is now he's stepping in against the Bear Jew. And not only is he stepping in against the Bear Jew, he's stepping in against the Bear Jew who has found a new home in a lighter weight class. This is one of those weird trends that I don't understand historically. As guys get older, they go up in weight. And over the last couple of years, we have seen several guys tailing out towards the end of their career, deciding, no, maybe I've been fighting too heavy of a weight and cutting down. We saw Jose Aldo go all the way down to 35 and look fucking great doing it. We saw Frankie Edgar drop down and look pretty fucking great doing it. Lots of guys recently have made the opposite journey that most fighters have. Paul Craig, the latest in that list. And I tell you what, for a guy who looked pretty fucking good at 205, he's looked pretty fucking good at 185 as well. And it doesn't seem to really be much of an issue for him to cut the other weight. So it kind of makes you wonder, should Paul Craig have been fighting middleweight this whole fucking time?
It does make you wonder, because you look at the list of names that he's dispatched.
Yeah,
Mauricio
man.
Shogun Hua, the former light heavyweight champ Jamal Hill. He's beaten some who's motherfuckers in there and absolute killers. Yeah, he's had a couple that haven't gone his way, but he's dangerous. I think for me, the most interesting thing about this fight, both of them are submission artists.
Yes.
We got to find out whose jiu-jitsu is better. And to be honest, I'm betting on the Bear Jew, because we've seen him throw submissions in places where he was getting his ass whipped and get the win. So I think he's under fire. He's going to do a little bit better. However, the problem with this is a lot of times when we see these fucking submission guys go against another submission guy, they end up duking it out. And God, it's usually bad to watch, because the guys that are really good at fucking submissions tend to not be great at striking. Unfortunately, it's just the way that works. There's a few exceptions to the policy. Don't get me wrong, Brendan Allen is on a fucking tear, but I don't think he's had the caliber of fights that Paul Craig has had. And that's a scary situation on the guys come down a weight class from light heavyweight to middleweight. And that's a big fucking jump, because you're thinking 205 to 185. That's fucking 20 pounds. You got to know that dude's got to be able to balloon up after fucking weigh-ins with no problem ballooning up.
Easily. Yeah, easily for sure.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I am a fan of seeing what Brendan Allen did this week, bring his kid to the fucking interviews. But at the same time, we've seen this time and time again. If you're focused too much on your family during a fight week,
Right.
you tend to shit the bed because your head's not in it where it should be. Don't get me wrong. There's been plenty, you got plenty of time before Saturday comes, but you have to go from family man to killer.
Yeah.
Like
You
you
gotta
have
put
to
them
zone
blinders on,
everything
man.
else out and just go into straight killer mode. And I don't know if he's going to be able to pull that off because I'm not going to lie. Watching his daughter fuck with the mic when he's doing interviews was absolutely fucking adorable.
Yeah.
But that is not what you want to see going into a fight. And then having to coach your kid to say, yeah, dad's going to win. That doesn't look too good. I'm just saying.
Yeah, there's a reason most guys, when they bring their kids to interviews, it's the post-fight interview, not the fight week interview. So they've got their head in the fucking game. The blinders are on. They're focused on their task. And then once they've won and it's time to celebrate and relax and the pressure's gone, then you bring your kid and you let them play with the fucking microphone and you have a good old time. But like you said, when you're going into fight week and your focus is more on your kid than the fight you've got ahead of you and a very dangerous guy standing across, makes you wonder a little, man. Makes you wonder.
I'm not gonna lie. I hope we get a really good grappling match because it's been a while since we've seen a good grappling match, like straight grappling. I guess I know it's MMA, and yes, I know it's UFC, but I love watching high level UFC fighters who are great submission artists have to fight another great submission artist and see who comes out on top.
Yeah, same. It's one of the reasons I love Polaris so much, is because it's generally exactly that. It's usually UFC fighters rolling in competitive grappling without striking for the most part.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a feeling we're gonna get an EBI kind of submission grappling with strikes kind of match in Allen versus Craig.
And don't forget, Paul Craig can knock people out. He knocked out Hula. I'm just saying.
No, he's got hands for sure. And I think
Not great hands, but he's got them.
right. No, I think the biggest thing for me is that yes, Brandon Allen is capable and we have seen him get submissions, but Brandon Allen's submission game is very basic. His defense is good, but his actual submission game is very, very basic. And Paul Craig is the polar opposite. Paul Craig generally doesn't give much of a fuck about defense, but his offensive submission game is off the fucking charts. He's got such a high level of jujitsu that he can attack you with crazy fucking attempts where there are no setups for it. And that's part of what makes Paul Craig so dangerous, in my opinion. Brandon Allen has submission threats, but it almost has to be laid out for him. The path has to be clear for him to connect 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 and then get the choke. Whereas Paul Craig can be sitting at 4 and choke you looking at 1. Like it doesn't have to be anywhere near set up or lined up. And that makes him very fucking dangerous, especially for a guy in Allen who doesn't necessarily generally have to think to look for shit like that.
Not to
Could be real
mention,
interesting.
if we're going fucking for all of the great shit that each of them do, I think Paul Craig also gets the nod for the Christopher Walken fucking and the fucking Tony Soprano. He fucking knocked both of those out of the park in one fucking interview.
Yep. Yeah, no shit. No, I'm very intrigued to see how this fight plays out Saturday evening. I'm very intrigued to see how tomorrow night plays out for Bellator as well. To be honest with you, it might sound a little contradictory, but honestly, I hope the Bellator PFL purchase fails. I hope it does not go through. And the main reason is that I can't remember the gentleman's name off the top of my head right now. The guy who's the acquisition specialist with PFL, who's working on the purchase going through, has basically said that if this deal does go through and PFL buys Bellator, they're going to keep things exactly as they are for potentially 2 more years. They're going to keep all the Bellator fighters just doing regular fights against other Bellator roster fighters and keep everyone in PFL still doing tournaments against other PFL fighters. And then after the 2-year grace period, they will decide whether they want to mingle the two or dissolve one and then stick their focus on the other. That's not a business plan, and that's not going to help the combat sports world. That's not going to help either organization. That actually might do detriment to both, in my opinion. What they need to do if they're going to buy it,
the entirety of MMA.
Yeah, if they're going to buy it, keep it the way that it fucking is. Let fighters who want to just fight. Let fighters who enjoy that tournament style, because there's clearly plenty of them, go enter that tournament style, but don't force people to pick. That's what's going to help them grow.
God, I hate saying this, and it fucking hurts every time I do something like this. It's one of the few times that I agree with Dana White. And yes, it's good to have them out there, to have that competition out there. It's good for everybody. Don't get me wrong, it keeps the UFC in the top spot no matter what in this case, if they stay out there, but you need that extra level of competition basically to have those extra feeder organizations, or give those fighters who get cut from the UFC because they've had a couple of poor performances the chance to go somewhere else, continue to make money for their families, possibly get themselves back into the big show. And I say the big show, I don't mean the big pay show, because it's definitely not the big pay show, but it's the one where people are going to get recognized and then possibly have that chance of making good money. A la Francis Ngannou, fuck you, UFC, I'm going to go make big money. And they said it couldn't be done.
Right? No, that reason right there is exactly why I don't shit on Uriah Faber's A1 Combat or Anthony Pettis's Fighting League or Real Fights with the Diaz brothers, because those organizations, as funny as they might sound and as silly as it might seem, still provide another outlet for fighters to create their own fucking path. For guys who aren't going to get picked up by the UFC, maybe not right now, maybe not ever, it gives them a place to apply their trade and provide for their family. Not everyone will be a UFC fighter in the long run, but that in no way, shape, or form means that nobody who doesn't fight for the UFC should get to fight. If you're a fighter, you should get to fight, and you shouldn't have to only go with the UFC or PFL or Bellator. So the more organizations there are, realistically, the better it is. Even if these other organizations aren't the biggest, the fact that they are out there and are providing other outlets for fighters to have an opportunity is a good thing overall.
Not to mention, you got other guys encroaching on the stateside, like fucking one coming stateside now. Yeah, they've been to Denver and they're doing their shit on fucking Amazon, which is great because that brings in another thing into the fold. And they have arguably they have some of the greatest fighters in their specific disciplines in the fucking world. Mikey Musumeci, the Rotolo brothers, fucking got Mighty Mouse over there. You got a fuck ton of Rodtang, fucking Sukuntas, dude.
Jonathan fucking Haggerty from 2 fucking weekends ago beat the shit out of fucking Fabricio Andrade. The kickboxing fucking world champion took on the MMA world champion just to prove how badass their fucking kickboxers are and beat the shit out of him.
Yeah.
One's moving in.
Saying, you got some major things that can happen out there. Don't get me wrong. Some of those fighters that they just want to strike, yeah, they can go to BKFC. But is BKFC going to continue to pick up MMA fighters? You bet your sweet ass they are. Because they know a lot of those guys can throw. And you get fucking crazy fuckers like Big Ben Rothwell in there. Who, if anybody's watched one of his recent fucking interviews, why do you fight BKFC now? I fight because it keeps me from killing somebody. It keeps my anger under control.
Gives them an outlet.
And I get paid to get rid of my anger. And give us those crazy villain laughs at the end of fucking... The more outlets these fighters have to go do their thing, the better. Not only better for them, but the better for us as fans. Because if there's somebody you've been watching for a long time and is starting to get down towards the end of their career, but you still want to watch them, you might have to tune in to Karate Combat. And that's fine. That's why we're getting Anthony Pettis and fucking What's his goddamn name?
Benson. Yeah, Benson
Yeah,
Henderson versus Anthony Pettis 3 is going to be in karate
And
fucking combat. Yeah.
also ending his career up is going to be another former champion going to karate combat as well in fucking Brazilian. I can't think of his fucking name right off the top of my head. Brazilian karate fighter, the UFC champ, light heavyweight. God, I can't. We're
Machida?
Machida,
Lyoto
yeah.
Machida?
Lyoto Machida's going to karate combat.
No shit.
Yeah,
I didn't
I
realize
guess
that.
that was one I could have added to the news. I forgot about that earlier, but yeah, is that he is going over there to finish off the rest of his fighting career.
Why the fuck not, man? That's where he started.
Yeah, and if you're gonna do it, he ain't got to worry about takedowns or anything else. He can just go in there and do the fucking thing he's known for. Fuck yes. He might not win them all because he is getting older,
right?
But still worth the show. And not to mention, karate combat has one hell of a cool setup. That like whole little pit with the raised walls.
And the walls are trampolines, so you can do bounce off the wall moves and shit too. I dig it.
There's some cool shit out there, and it just goes in saying keep all of those different organizations. The more the merrier. It gives us a chance to watch highlight shit in different places.
Yep. Well, and tying back to last weekend with this story, Randy Costa was on MMA Fighting this afternoon talking about his match with Jason Knight and Game Bred Bare Knuckle MMA last weekend. Randy Costa talked about it for the first time this afternoon. In the span of 3 days, he lost his UFC contract. He broke up in a very horrible relationship and then sold everything that he owned and moved to Mexico. He was going to be a dive instructor. He was living in Mexico as a dive instructor and got a last minute call from his family. Close family friend had a very serious illness, so he flew home. While he was home, he got the last minute call. Hey, Jason Knight needs an opponent. Do you want to fight him bare knuckle fucking MMA? Sure. So he signed the fucking deal. He literally sold everything his own, his car, all of his possessions. He was living in fucking Mexico as a dive instructor. He was done with fighting. He said himself, I was never going to go back to fighting again. And while he was at home visiting a family friend who had a fucking health scare, he got that call for Game Bred. Now he's back in. Now he's back in the fighting world because he had another outlet, because he had, I think he said 7 fights in a row after he lost the UFC contract. 7 fights in a row booked, and all of them fell out. Every fucking one of them until the last one before he sold everything and moved. The day of the fucking fight, his opponent pulled out.
Yeah.
Without organizations like Game Bred, as funny as it is, we would never see Randy Costa again.
Those boys put on one hell of a fucking show, too. If you haven't seen that fight,
that was fucking spectacular, man.
Jason Knight just likes to get involved in fucking bloodbaths, apparently.
That dude's the ultimate masochist. He just loves getting his fucking face punched, man.
Yeah. Did you look at that inaugural card on fucking BKFC with him? Yeah.
Well, not to mention his wars with Artem over in BKFC, man. That's what put BKFC on the map. Their first, I think their 3 of the first 8 or 10 cards that they put on were headlined or at least advertised, built around Artem Lobov versus Jason Knight in some of the craziest fucking bare knuckle matches you've ever fucking seen.
Their first fight was so fucking wild. Like that was the one that sold everybody on BKFC.
Fuck yes.
Which is why they are where they're at now, which is making money and fucking getting bigger. Because look at how many great fucking, oh god, this hurts to say this, how many great UFC fighters they have right now on that roster. John Dodson, you got fucking Big Ben Rothwell, you got Alvarez, got fucking, oh god, this hurt, Mike Parrott, sorry, I can't get it out. But you got a lot of great fucking fighters on there. Some of them are better, what I'll call street fighters than others, but you just look at the quality that they've gotten over there now, and it's showing in the fights that they're putting on. The quality has gotten better. And there's guys that were over there that we thought were going to be rule breakers, and now they're bringing in all this other great talent. It's definitely moving in the right direction. And I'm hoping sooner rather than later, we can see them in other than like 5 or 6 states, you know?
Right.
Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, no shit.
They're doing the overseas thing already, which is fucking great because that just adds to the roster, and they're obviously doing well. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, they've got a card this weekend. I think it's in Bulgaria, either Slovakia or like somewhere very Eastern Bloc with names that no one will recognize in any of the matchups. But
they all have a
they're
hammer
out there
and
doing
sickle
it.
after them.
Yeah, they're out there doing it. So can't fucking be mad at that for sure. But that being said, that is what we've got for this particular episode. There is plenty of punchy chicky to tune into this weekend, so make sure you tune into all of it. We will be off until I believe it's the November 30th. We come back to talk about that December 2nd Austin card. So you guys have got a couple weeks without our faces to enjoy. That being said, if you like what we get up to around here, please make sure you give the thumbs up and your notifications are turned on, whichever platform you subscribe to this on, whether you're catching this live Thursday nights on youtube.com/I'mNoJoe for the live video portion, or you're picking up the audio section a week later on anchor.fm/I'mNoJoe for your podcast consumption choice. Either way, we appreciate you. Make sure you give us that thumbs up. On the other side of things, if you don't like what we get up to around here, first and foremost, what the fuck are you doing this deep into a podcast you didn't enjoy? Just give it a thumbs down and go fuck yourself. We won't even dispute it. That said, we wrap things up around here. That's not necessarily the end of it, because first thing tomorrow and pretty much every Friday morning, our young fellow who couldn't make it this evening and his partner slow bake and contemplate themselves for their Slow Bake and Contemplate podcast, available over there on Spreaker. Their links for that are down in the description, as well as the link to their channel over on the I'm No Joe Discord server. Feel free to hop on there and say hello to those boys as well. And that is not the end of it either, because after that, we bring it back around to start the week again, and we get to Wednesday nights where we are over on that guy's channel. That side, there we go. Over on the Golf T Vapes YouTube channel for the Foggy Fairway. Come hang out 9 p.m. ish. Generally, we get started. We do DIY e-liquids. We talk advocacy. We shoot around. Yeah, we sit around. We shoot the shit. We hang out and we have a good time. It's fun. You should come check it out. Links, as always, down in the description.
Thanks, sir. Just an FYI, in case you missed it, no show next week for me. I got to get ready for Turkey Day. So, big household full of people. Thank you. Now, for those of you who are unaware, the host here, Meter himself, actually does more than one thing. In fact, he does many things. So if you go right down below, click on Linktree/The Meter Does Many Things, it will take you to all of the many things that the Meter does do. Now, if that's too hard to remember because you're only watching I'm No Joe, you can also go to Linktree/I'm No Joe, and it will also take you to all of the many things that the Meter does do. So you have options available to you, multitudinous ways to find out all of the many things the Meter does do. Figure it out. Go click on the links. Find out. Come join us for everything we all do.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, sir. Much appreciated. So that being said, that is it. That is all we've got for this particular episode. Thank you to everyone, whether you're catching us live or you're catching a replay. We appreciate you just the same. That is all we've got for this particular episode. So until next time, boys and girls, remember, don't let ignorance stop you. You can root for anything.
Everybody was kung fu fighting. Those kids were fast as lightning. In fact, it was a little bit frightening. How do I say goodbye to what